Leadership and Civic Engagement Institutes are tailored to Mandela Washington Fellows who are civically engaged and serving the public through non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, or voluntarism. The institutes expose fellows to civic engagement in the United States while building technical and leadership capacity in areas such as advocacy, strategic planning, organizational development, and the intersection of civil society with business and government. In this special episode of the book series, we hear the story of a Mandela Washington Fellow who was selected as part of the leadership in civic engagement. Enjoy the show. Good morning to you all, our viewers and listeners living and working in different parts of the world. I'm happy today to be joined by the Mandela Washington Fellows for the year 2024. These are fellows from Zimbabwe. There are several other fellows that were selected from African countries, and there are also other fellows that were selected from Zimbabwe who could not make it to this particular episode, but we're going to cover them in the next episodes that we are going to be discussing about the Mandela Washington Fellowship. So we want to know about these programs, and we want to know the stories of all these fellows that were selected so that it can benefit our audience and any of those people that might be interested in also applying for the Mandela Washington Fellowship in the next application cycle. Would now want to get in the third speaker, the third fellow. These are not from the presidential precinct in Virginia, but they are currently in Delaware. That's where they are based, and I'll give them the time to speak about the work that they are doing and to tell their stories. So I'll start with Simbarashe Hunzvi.
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity and such powerful messages that are coming from my fellow colleagues who are at the presidential precinct. One thing about me is that I love to listen to other people's stories. At the same time, I love to tell my own story. And I think this interview is a perfect opportunity for me to do both. Listen to the stories of others, but at the same time, also tell my own story and the impact I want to make in this world. So as you have rightfully said, my name is Simbarashe Hunzvi. I am one of the Mandela Washington Fellows currently at the University of Delaware in Delaware State under the Civic Leadership track. I hail from Marondera, a very small town just outside Harare, usually forgotten, but now we are in the limelight trying to...
I should tell people that that's where I come from as well.
It's good to see our little town, our little forgotten town getting this kind of exposure. Going back to my Delaware experience. So the University of Delaware, but let me start with the state of Delaware. The state of Delaware is considered as the first state in the United States of America because it's the state that was the first to adopt the Constitution of America. So it brings a lot of history around the democracy in America, around civic leadership, and around the involvement of citizens in constitutional processes as well as in governance, which is a perfect opportunity for me coming from a state which is yet to grow significantly in terms of its governance and democracy. The kinds of networks and learnings that I get from such a rich and diverse town and state. The University of Delaware is also equally diverse, having a lot of historical achievements. One of the first universities to have an international study program, and one of the first universities to also incorporate women in terms of enrollment. So just being there in that historical state and the historical university, for me, it is such overwhelming in the sense that it makes me feel like I'm part of this historical background of this town. And it makes me feel like there's a lot of things that I can also do within my country and within my town to grow it, to make it better, and to make things that are not there become. What do I do? I am into social and economic justice advocacy, particularly how the lived realities of people need to speak to the natural resources that we have as a country. For example, we have vast majority of resources in the country of Zimbabwe and in the African continent as a whole. But in the vast majority of instances, we, the citizens, don't get to benefit from those resources. And we have a lot of other challenges that are coming along the way, like climate change and environmental degradation, which makes it crucial for the integration of my work in social and economic justice and environmental justice, because you see that the growth of the economy is also coming with the dilapidation of the environment, especially in mining communities in Zimbabwe. So that's the kind of advocacy that I'm doing to empower people, particularly the marginalized people within the marginalized communities, to get a voice in economic governance and to also play a role in terms of environmental sustainability. So coming here as a Mandela Washington Fellow is a very, what would I call it? It's a very crucial moment for me, because it sort of validates the kind of work that I've been doing for a long period of time. For getting accepted into the Mandela Washington Fellowship for me was validation that, yes, we have been seeing what you have been doing, and now we want you to do more. And this is an opportunity that we are giving to you to enable you to cultivate the work that you have been doing so that you can do more for your community and you can do more for your country in terms of the advocacy that you are doing for the environment and the socio-economic issues. Another thing about Delaware, going back to the University of Delaware, that's where Joe Biden learned. Joe Biden got his first law degree at the University of Delaware, and he hails from Delaware. So I'm like, wow, the president of an entire United States of America has been stepping or walking on the land that I'm walking right now. It gives me a sense of power and a sense of purpose to say that as an ordinary guy coming from a very humble background in Marundera, I'm walking on the roads that great people have walked. I'm stepping on the pavements that great people have stepped. And that gives me power, and I get a sense of entitlement to tell all the other people that are likely to walk this journey that we can do it as young African leaders. We can change the face of this continent. We can change how the African continent is viewed, the narratives that are around the African continent. It's up to us, the people who come for the Mandela Washington Fellowship, to look at the American state of governance, the American state of affairs. When they look at us, they should see the narrative that we want to paint of our continent and of our country. When they look at me, an ordinary Simba, they should see the Zimbabwe that is different from the Zimbabwe that they see from the media. The Zimbabwe that they see from the news should be different with the interaction that they have with me as an individual. That's one key thing about this fellowship that's important to me, that the American community and the African community get to interact at a more personal level. We get to know each other and learn from each other, which brings me to the things that I've learned so far from the fellowship. One of the key things that have been like, wow, for me during this experience is learning about leadership. But not only leadership, but how we lead from strength. I've learned like that I have a lot of strengths, and I've identified the kinds of strengths that I have that I can utilize in my civic leadership, but also in terms of my interaction with other people. And that is crucial for me, because we exist in the vast majority of instances as leaders, as young leaders, without knowing our strengths. We focus on our weaknesses, on our shortcomings, on the things that we can't do. But being here as a fellow, I've gotten to learn that my strengths are more important, and I can incorporate my strengths to make a massive impact on the advocacy that I'm doing, and also on the leadership that I play within the different advocacy roles that I play. I've interacted with a number of organizations in my advocacy work. One of the organizations that I've interacted with greatly is an ecumenical organization where I've been instrumental in crafting the ecumenical advocacy policy, which has been used across the continent. It's a faith-based organization, and I've worked with a number of faith-based organizations to make sure that the conversations around economic governance, the conversations around natural resources and the extraction of resources, they go to all the people, the faith-based organizations, the people at the grassroots. So these are the kinds of things that I believe that if I incorporate these kinds of lessons I'm getting from the fellowship, I can be able to cultivate these things to make massive impact in my community. In my spare time, I'm also the founding curator of a hub in Marondera, the small Marondera. There's a hub of the Global Shapers community, which is a World Economic Forum initiative. And under that hub, I work with young people below the age of 27 years old. And these young people who I've worked with from scratch are looking at me. I'm in America, they're seeing these updates. They're looking at me and they're saying, wow, we want to be like you. We want to have this same experience. So I think for me, it's the experience of knowing that whilst I'm here, there are a lot of people who are looking at me and saying, as a young person, I can also do this. As a young person, there's more that I can do to impact my community and to impact my country. And for me, that is the satisfaction that I'm getting from this fellowship, to know that there's a whole community of people who are looking at me and saying, we have never had someone from Marondera go for the Mandela Washington Fellowship. And now a whole community in Marondera is saying, how did you get there? How can we get there? How can we be part of all these processes? Can you please tell us more about it? How can we make more impact? And for me, on top of all the lessons I'm getting, this satisfaction is something that I hold so dearly to say that as a young leader, as a young person, there is a lot of inspiration that I can get from the kind of leadership lessons I'm getting within this fellowship. And lastly, the networks in America through this fellowship are amazing. I've interacted with people within the American community who are doing massive work in terms of grassroots mobilization. Yes. I've interacted with academics who have published great works, and I've interacted with politicians who are so high profile. Like recently we had a meeting with one of the senators within America, and the interaction we had with him showed me the kind of politics I would want to see in my own country, where I can speak to my president, speak to my minister on a level ground. I can tell them my issue and they can listen to me and interact with me at that level. So the networks are amazing. And I think that's one thing I would take away from this fellowship, that as young people within the continent, there's a lot that we can do. America is not perfect. It's got a lot of issues, yes, but they're dealing with their own issues. And as African youths, we have our issues, and we need to be also dealing with those issues. And we have the mind, we have the will, and we have the people who are here are a network that we can build from. One of the things that I really value is that we have the mind, and the mind is a terrible thing to waste. We cannot waste our mind. It's important for us to build a mindset of growth and become the thought leaders that we ought to be for the development of our continent. And for me, that sums up my Mandela experience and what I would like to see in the continent as I go back to Zimbabwe after the fellowship. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Simbarashe Hunzvi. What should I say? That was insightful. That was mind-blowing. I am very grateful to have you on this platform today. Now let me move to the last speaker, who is also with Mr. Simbarashe Hunzvi in Delaware. This is Nyasha Muzadzi. Nyasha, this is your time.